When my sister Emily got engaged, we were overjoyed. She'd met Daniel at a hiking club, and within a year, they were planning a small countryside wedding in Vermont. I was her maid of honor, which meant I was staying with her the night before, at the old inn where the ceremony would be held. The place was charming, white clapboard walls, ivy climbing the chimneys, a lake glimmering behind it. It felt timeless, almost like the kind of place where memories get trapped in the walls. The owner, a woman in her 60s named Mrs. Caldwell, greeted us at check-in and handed over our keys. "You girls are in room 9, she said. "That's the bridal suite. We don't usually rent it before the ceremony, but I made an exception." When Emily asked why, she smiled a little too long and said, "Because love deserves a head start." That night, Emily hung her wedding dress by the window. It was vintage lace, ivory-colored, with tiny pearls along the sleeves. I remember how she kept staring at it before bed, not admiringly, but nervously. Around midnight, I woke up to a sound, a soft rustle. The moonlight spilled across the floor, and in it, I saw the dress, swaying slightly, as if someone had just brushed past it. I sat up, my heart thudding. "Em," I whispered. She was asleep beside me. Then faintly, I heard it, humming. A woman's voice, low and melodic, coming from somewhere near the window. When I turned on the lamp, the humming stopped. The dress was still. The next morning, Emily looked pale. She told me she'd had a dream that a woman in an old wedding gown had been standing over her, whispering, "It's not your turn yet." I laughed it off, trying to calm her nerves. But when we went downstairs, Mrs. Caldwell stopped us and asked, "Did you sleep well in room 9? Emily hesitated. "Fine," she said. The owner nodded slowly and said, "Good." It's been quiet for once. During the ceremony, just as Emily started down the aisle, the wind picked up hard. So hard it slammed the chapel doors behind her. Everyone jumped. Afterward, as the photographer was setting up shots by the lake, Emily suddenly went still, staring toward the inn's window upstairs. "Do you see her?" she asked. I followed her gaze. There, standing in room 9's window, was a woman in white. Not Emily, not me. The figure was old-fashioned, her face pale and stern. When I blinked, she was gone. Later that evening, I asked Mrs. Caldwell about the room. She sighed and said, "The first bride to ever stay here never made it to her wedding. Drowned herself in that lake when her fiancé didn't show. That was in 1912. I don't usually rent room 9 for brides. They tend to dream of her." Emily and Daniel moved away after the wedding. They're happy now, but she told me something once that still gives me chills. On their anniversary, she took the dress out to have it cleaned and found a small wet handprint on the hem. I've photographed weddings for 15 years. I've seen everything: laughter, tears, fainting grooms, runaway flower girls. But I'll never forget the Harper wedding. Not because it was beautiful, though it was, because it was the only one where the bride disappeared before the reception. The Harpers had rented a historic mansion in Maryland for the event, the kind of estate with marble floors, chandeliers, and gardens that looked like something out of a painting. I arrived early to scout locations and noticed a portrait hanging by the grand staircase. A 19th century bride, unsmiling, her veil cascading like a waterfall of lace. I took a photo of it just to test my camera settings. The ceremony went smoothly. The bride, Amelia, was radiant, though she seemed oddly distracted during her vows, glancing up toward the landing as if someone were watching her. When I checked my preview screen later, I noticed something strange. In one of the wide shots of the ceremony, there was a faint blur behind her, a white silhouette on the balcony above, watching. During the reception, as guests danced and laughed, I was packing up when I heard someone whisper my name. "Ray." It came from the staircase. Thinking it was Amelia wanting one last portrait, I followed the sound up the stairs. The lights flickered. I called out again. No answer. At the top of the landing, the air turned cold like stepping into a freezer. Then I saw her, the woman from the portrait. Her veil floated around her like smoke. She didn't move, didn't speak, but I could hear something. Crying, muffled, coming from behind the wall. I ran downstairs to tell someone, but chaos had already begun. The DJ had cut the music, and people were shouting. Amelia was gone. They searched the mansion for hours, even drained the reflecting pool outside. She was never found. 2 weeks later, I went through my camera files again, looking for anything that might help. In one of the last shots I took that night, a candid of Amelia dancing, I saw it clearly. A second figure right behind her, face veiled, hands reaching toward her neck. The Harpers never reopened the mansion for events. They say the portrait was removed, but the nail it hung from keeps falling out of the wall, no matter how many times they patch it. It's been 8 years since my wedding, and people still ask me why I never talk about that day. I tell them it's complicated. What I don't tell them is that I still hear him sometimes. My husband, whispering my name in the dark. We'd planned the ceremony in an old church just outside Salem. It was small, candlelit, perfect. Everything had gone wrong leading up to it. Lost invitations, a collapsed cake, even a broken ring box. My mother joked that maybe the universe was testing us. I wish I'd listened. That morning, as I was getting ready, one of the bridesmaids found a note tucked under my bouquet. It was written in my husband's handwriting. "Don't marry me, I'm sorry." But he swore he hadn't written it. His best man even vouched that he'd been with him all morning. I laughed it off as some cruel prank, but deep down, I felt uneasy. The ceremony started at dusk. The church was glowing, the candles flickering. As we exchanged vows, a gust of wind blew through the open door, snuffing out half the flames. The air grew so cold that everyone could see their breath. The officiant hesitated, but I nodded for him to continue. We finished the vows in near darkness. When he said, "You may kiss the bride," I leaned forward, but my husband froze, eyes wide, staring at something behind me. Later, he told me he'd seen a figure standing just inside the doorway, wearing a veil identical to mine. That night, during the reception, he disappeared for nearly an hour. When he came back, his face was pale, his hands trembling. He said he thought he'd seen his ex, the one who died in a car accident the year before. "She was wearing a wedding dress," he whispered. "She said I promised." He didn't make it to morning. They found him in the churchyard just before sunrise, lying near the grave of his ex-fiancée. There were no signs of violence, no wounds, just cold, like he'd frozen to death in the middle of summer. I don't celebrate anniversaries anymore. The night before our first would have been anniversary, I woke up to my wedding ring, which I'd locked away, sitting on my nightstand. Inside the band, there was new engraving that hadn't been there before. It said, "Till death do us part." And after. They say a wedding is the happiest day of your life. A celebration of love, promise, and forever. But forever can mean many things. For some, it ends in laughter, and children, and growing old together. For others, it ends before the cake is even cut. There's something about weddings that seems to stir the unseen. Maybe it's the vows, the binding of souls, the crossing of hearts. Maybe when two people swear till death do us part, death listens. These stories remind us that love and loss are closer than we think, sometimes separated by nothing more than a locked door, a reflection in a mirror, or a name whispered in an empty room. So if you ever attend a wedding in an old church, or stay in a bridal suite that smells faintly of lilies and dust, don't ignore the chill in the air. Don't brush off the feeling that you're being watched, because not every guest signs the registry.